And another economic challenge facing the GCC countries is the integration of our economies to create an effective trading bloc with the rest of the world. The current global economic instability poses a significant strategic challenge to us, and we must unite to face this challenge and work toward protecting and safeguarding our economies from these financial and economic shocks. So, what is now the long-term strategic challenge to the GCC? And here, by far, the foremost challenge to the GCC security and development in the long term is the challenge of demography. The percentage of foreign workers to total workforce in the GCC countries are United Arab Emirates 90%. 90% of the workforce are non-nationals, foreigners. Bahrain 62%, Saudi Arabia 65%, Oman 65%, Qatar 86%, and Kuwait 83%. These vast discrepancies in the demographic makeup of all the GCC countries represent a warning sign of the serious threats of social, political, and cultural fabric of the GCC society. The main cause of this major dislocation in the demographic profile can be found in the fundamental disequilibrium in the labor market. The continuous inflow of cheap foreign labor reinforces the distorted structure of incentives in favor of an updated and inefficient economic mode of production. This economic structure, which is based on cheap labor, would not be able or will not be capable of creating meaningful employment for our emerging youth. The fact that almost half of the GCC population is under the age of 18 makes us face an upcoming wave of young men and women who are soon to enter the job market. With a GCC population growth rate of more than 3% annually, the fundamental challenge is to ensure that the market capable of absorbing this substantial increase in labor supply. Thus, job creation is among the major goals of GCC, and amending the labor market model is vital to this end. Our government needs to implement initiatives to encourage small and emerging business ventures. We must provide incentives to the private sector to employ our local youth. More employment in the public sector is not the answer. A major project by one of our oil companies, for example, may require an expenditure of $15 billion. But since our industry is capital and not labor intensive, this project may produce less than 1,000 new jobs. That's about $15 million for each job created. So instead, the private sector must be the promoter of job creation. Kuwait recently passed a new labor law that provides more protection and incentives for citizens to move from public to private sector jobs. The Kuwaiti private sector is already attracting some of the brightest minds in the country. A key indicator of whether this law is successful is whether we see greater Kuwaiti being employed by the private sector in a few years from now. Our youth have earned advanced degrees from some of the finest institutions in the world. Many are turning toward entrepreneurship and starting new small businesses within the GCC. They are active in the information technology sphere, thus pushing us in government to keep pace with their political debates in the blogs sphere. There is much room for optimism in this new generation. The governments must now assist in creating the right environment and then get out of the way. Finally, so as to go back to my historic plateau, I can see challenges and opportunities. I can see clear and present dangers to the GCC security that needs immediate actions. I also see dangerous currents of economic dislocations and demographic distortions, which requires a coordinated GCC response. And I'm confident that we, as a GCC, will be able to rise up to these challenges and achieve our common desired goals. Can we do it? I think, yes, we can. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, and now he'll entertain some questions. Please, please speak loudly and identify yourselves. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm Hussein with Ryan newspaper. And, my question is about the greater security of the Middle East. There have been reports about Scud missiles finding their way to Lebanon's Hezbollah. Okay.
Wrong microphone.
I don't have to repeat everything, though. Is this a source of concern to you, the increasing tension between Lebanon, Israel, and Syria? And is the GCC doing any preventive diplomacy in this regard? Thank you very much.
Well, I think what we see in terms of this heightened tension as a result of repeated Israeli threats against Lebanon and Syria is something that we think that it's a deliberate act on the part of the Israeli government to obfuscate the sort of activities that it is doing inside the Palestinian territories. Scud missile, the last time I checked, and those who are in the military can correct my information, is that you cannot have it in a small bag and slip it across the borders. It's a huge and a visible structure that you have to move. For that reason, I think the Israeli allegation that those huge missiles are crossing the borders into Lebanon, I think they are trying to turn world attention from the sort of things that they are doing in East Jerusalem, for example, confiscating and stealing, actually, more land, obliterating the history and the heritage of the Palestinian people by claiming some of these historical sites as Israeli sites, and also by denying the United States the ability to resume its function as a broker of the peace process, and refusing to abide the quartet requirements for a resumption of the peace process. So in that sense, we think that this is just we think it's an obvious tactic on the part of the Israelis to hide the fact that what they are doing in Palestine is something that is going to be absolutely unacceptable.